Hi, my name is McKenna Devine, and this is my oral presentation for Humanities 110 over the life and career of Alice Neel. Alice Neel was born in 1900s and would unfortunately die in 1984. However, her legacy would live on throughout her artwork. Although her artwork was not always loved by many, it would eventually become a staple for who she was. An artist would end up being one of the favorite things Alice would ever become in her life. Before we get too much into her artwork, however, it is important to recognize where Alice came from. So let's address her family life. Alice's father was George Neel. George was an accountant and was a descendant from many steamboat owners and opera singers. Her mother, however, Alice Hartley, was a descendant of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Alice would not come from a small home, however. Alice was the second youngest of 5 children that Alice Hartley had. Alice had 3 brothers and 1 sister. Unfortunately for her, this did not mean that there was no hardship. Although her family endured many struggles due to ups and downs in the economy, her biggest struggle would be when her oldest brother, Hartley, would pass away when she was just a few months old of diphtheria. Diphtheria was a disease that was claiming many lives at this point, but also would take one of the most important to her, at some point being her older. Although her family would endure hardship, this would not keep Alice Neel from her education and striving to become the artist that she had always known she had wanted to be. Alice, like everyone else and many other children in her age, would graduate high school in 1918. After high school, she would get a job in helping with the army. She would do this job for 3 years. Within these 3 years, she was saving up money and helping to provide for her family. Eventually, she would get accepted into the School of Industrial Art in Philadelphia. She would pay for this with the money that she had raised from her job and many scholarships. After this, she would get accepted into the Fine Arts program at the Philadelphia School of Design for Women in 1921. At this program, she would study under 2 of her most influential teachers at this point in her life. Besides her career, would be set off by studying landscaping, artistry under Henry Schnell, and life drawings and portraits under Ray Britton. This would lead her to go to a summer camp program in 1925 in the village of Chester Springs. This is where she would not only deepen her love for art, but would also end up finding her husband. This is where she would meet Carlos Enriquez. They would marry in a small town of Colin in 1925. Within their first year of marriage, despite finding what she would think at this point was the love of her life, she would get the honor of getting her first exhibition and having her first child. This was some of what she thought to be as her biggest accomplishments in life. Her first daughter was named Santalina. Unfortunately, however, Santalina would tragically be taken away from her mother at just a few months old. She would be taken away from her mother the same way that her older brother had been taken away from her years before. Santalina would die of diphtheria. However, the grim news of her daughter passing would not stop her from trying to become a mother yet again. Then, in what she thought would be the best days of her life, in November of 1928, she would give birth to her second child, Istabetha. Unfortunately, she would not get to mother her throughout her entire life either. Due to some marital falling outs and arguing, Carlos would take her second daughter and her only living daughter and child at this point away from her. He would take her to Europe, not telling her where she had taken her, and leave her with family to be raised. This would lead to the downfall of Alice's mental health. Although mental health may not sound like an important topic for some artists, this would play a massive role in how Alice Neel would make her art and would grow an artist. Her first big mental breakdown would be what no mother can argue with her about, due to her daughter, her only living one, being taken away from her. Keep in mind that her second daughter was born not too long after she had lost her first. This would show to be very traumatic and lead to some of the highest highs, but definitely be some of the lowest lows within Alice's life. This, with the combination of the separation from her husband, would cause Alice to be hospitalized for the first time due to mental illness. Unfortunately, this was not the only time that she would be hospitalized for mental illness or mental instability. Shortly after realizing that her marriage was a loss and that she would no longer get to raise her sweet, darling child, Alice Neel would attempt suicide. This would get her hospitalized for the second time throughout her life. This would lead into what some would think would be a divorce and a remarriage. However, life after the separation did not involve a divorce or a remarriage when it came to the life of Alice Neel. This, however, does not mean that Alice lived a lonely life. Although she would never remarry, she would end up having what some would call multiple romantic partners, one of which would give her her only son that she would ever have, Hartley. Hartley was named not only after her mother's maiden name, but after her oldest brother who she had lost, just the same way that she had lost her first daughter. Hartley was her only son and the only child that Alice Neel would unfortunately ever get to keep to mother throughout their entire life. Again, pairing her children with her financial gain and her love for the arts being her two favorite things in her life, she would get funding for her artwork after their separation. This would lead into her creating many gorgeous paintings that we will learn to love for many years. The first painting I want to talk about is that is titled Carlos Enquires, which, if you think that name sounds familiar, it's because it is. This is her late husband. This painting was done in 1926. Throughout this painting, she was experimenting with multiple different brush strokes to create texture, as you can see in the background and throughout the sides of his shirt and a tie. Second painting he ever did, well, that I want to talk about anyway, not that she ever did, was that of Hartley, her son. This painting was done in 1966. Although some people would try to say that this painting was of her older brother or trying to just use her mother's maiden name, she would confirm that this was of her son, and the joys that she got of how laid back he was despite all of the turmoil that she had gone through in life. Throughout this painting, she used shading to get the text to make a more three-dimensional look, and would use play on colors to make the painting more appeasable to the eye. The last one I want to talk about is her self-portrait. By far, possibly one of her most popular paintings. Well, it wouldn't be at first. Many women would think that this painting was appalled in nature due to the realisticness of how the human body ages. Many women, especially, did not like that she showed the realisticness of the sags and folds and wrinkles that we all get as we age. Due to the times, this is not seen as abnormal, due to the fact that women in this time were more conservative and were told not to flaunt or show off their aging. Hence why many women would try to cover up their aging wrinkles with makeup. But this is not what Alice wanted to portray. Alice wanted to portray a realistic picture of what it is like to age with grace and dignity. Her self-portrait would be painted in 1980, just 4 years before her life would tragically end. As you can see throughout this painting, she would use shading just like she did in the one before, but would use contrasting colors in the floor to make a more differentiating approach of the room. She also struggled with with body images and self-image throughout her life, and this would be known for what might have helped bring her out of her shell. Although Alice Neel would not be appreciated in her time, I think we all can appreciate how realistic Alice was. Throughout all of her hardships and life's ups and downs, her contributions to society of you can get anywhere as long as you keep your head up and work hard, and her artwork will never be forgotten. I hope you enjoyed my short presentation on Alice Neel and learned some of what it really meant to be an artist in her time. Although Alice did not have an easy life, she certainly made the best of what she was given. Thank you.